Welcome to another episode of Technically Together. We are on number 10, so without further ado, let's get to the conversations.
Cheers.
Hi.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I can't say what I got this with, but let's just say it came from Amazon. So it's a nice little cup.
Oh, wait, you meant that Amazon sent you it.
Yes.
I thought, like everything else you owned,
No.
you got it from Amazon.
Well, in that regard, I can actually make a small announcement on the show that okay, so I can't talk about what came with this cup. All I can say is this cup came with it. And it's nice. This is one of those cups that if you're in the US and you're listening to this podcast, you have more than likely seen this cup on your Instagram feeds. Like this is an ad on your Instagram. It's called the
Why?
It's a company called Fellow, and they make a lot of coffee products. And this is one of their travel. This is one of, well, there's a cover. I don't have it right now, but this is a travel mug that they advertise a lot on Instagram ads. Anyway, you're going to hear a lot more about Amazon from me moving forward. Today, I just officially joined Amazon Live as a live streamer on their platform.
I'm excited for that. Wait, I'm sorry. Why am I adjusting like mid recording? But as an update, you guys, I got my setup fixed after a long conversation and practicing what we preach about, the back and forth of working together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very funny and unique thing that we work together, but we don't work together. I think it's a privileged place to be able to work together so that I get to know you that way, but still not have to work together. You know what I mean?
I mean, we're very far apart.
Yes, so. Technically we're together though.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that for every podcast episode, we should have a contest without introducing ourselves in the show, right? We just get to it. We'd have our conversation, but the first person to say technically together wins. And then so we segue into the actual intro. You know what I mean?
I guess.
That would be a fun game.
Between the two of us, I'm the one who loves puns. So I'm going to find ways pretty easily.
But I won today.
Well, I didn't know we were playing.
Neither did I.
Well,
so wait,
yeah.
Just to get back to it, just all I meant was that we work together because we work
in a similar industry, in the same industry.
Technically together, yeah. But how we work, how do I explain this? For example, when we cover shows, we are together and work as a team, but have two different outputs.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not like I work on mine and you work on yours.
Mm-hmm.
We run around together as a unit, working on our own individual stuff. So it's like we work together, but we don't really work together.
Yeah.
But we act like. So, I mean, we're privileged in that we're able to do that and figure things out about each other, I think, doing that. I mean, it's the same thing about being able to travel together a lot because, one of the tips that people talk about when they get into relationships is to travel with your significant other before anything else, because then you'd be able to get to know them in a different sense and how they are under pressure. And we've been doing that because of the nature of our relationship, which we didn't even put any thought into, but that was how we knew each other at first,
Yeah.
I knew travel, Josh, before anyone.
But yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just a very interesting
and you've seen my thought process as to my constantly changing, let's say, outlook when it comes to what do I bring on this trip, what do I bring on that trip.
Oh my gosh, it was first bring everything and then bring nothing, and then there was a wash clothes phase.
Yeah, I would wash clothes in the hotel room.
But it only ever really happened twice in my memory, or thrice. And I remember telling you in the middle of a tech show, you're not washing clothes. But then at some point he was able to squeeze it in. I mean,
here's what happened though. I tried to be super proactive about it. So early on during the actual event, that day's clothes, I made sure to wash the moment we got back to the hotel room, which I was like, all right, cool. As long as I have sort of this, even if it's like late at night and I feel like crap, that's how I feel at home when I do laundry anyway. So it should be fine.
I don't know why you're like, for something you hate doing at home. I don't know why you insisted
No,
on packing
I
it
don't
over.
hate, I don't hate it. I don't hate doing it at home. It's just I
Or was I
never,
projecting?
I don't,
I'm
I
kidding.
never hate, I grew, that was one of the first household chores I was taught was laundry. So even at a very young age, I was already folding the family's clothes. So it was,
So, fun fact for non-Filipinos, we don't wash our clothes. Like the normal Filipino, like my friends and I, we don't know how to do laundry.
yeah.
We usually get a lady to do it for us. If we lived in a condo, we'll have like laundromats, but like not the laundromats where you do the laundry or something. Like we have people who pick up the clothes and wash them for us and then bring them back.
Yeah. And it's not a
Washing places.
and I've been in
I mean,
I've been in this particular conversation enough times to know to tell our listeners it's not a wealth thing. It's a cultural thing. Like people
yeah, like
have this.
they people have a washing lady too, even if you don't own a washing machine. Like
Yeah.
you can hire a lady to come to your house and like wash your clothes. So I mean, but even if like if you didn't have that, you'd probably be washing it, but not in a washing machine.
Mm. Oh yeah,
Too.
that was something
So
that
for such, yeah,
that was something that I
but it's
experienced when I
also
went there. We had on my family's farm. I woke up one morning and walked outside, and there was a long line of all of my clothes, and I was like, "Oh, whoa! I've never seen my clothes in
yeah.
that way."
So wow, that's funny. That's funny, babe. Um, but it's also like, for example, my mom had refused to get a washing machine that fully worked. Like she got like a cheaper ones because it's also cultural. We had help.
Hmm.
So like to her mind, like it wasn't really something that she bothered with. So they were washing it, so it's like
Yeah. Well,
um
to finish the story from earlier, this particular show or event, I'm trying to remember, was it a show or was it like a launch event? It might have been a launch event. But
I
anyway,
can't remember.
I made an effort to wash my clothes early on. Like each day that I was done, if I felt like my clothes needed washing, I washed it. And then I would hang it because I actually brought a clothesline of my own, one that's made for hotel rooms. And I literally picked that up. And
From
I,
Amazon,
of
not
course,
sponsored.
not yet. And I would hang the clothes, and this is when I realized, like, as nice as this notion is for me to pack really light, like maybe three like sets of clothes and then just rotate them by washing them. Here was the thing. It took forever for them to dry. So
Yeah,
the clothes I
and they
wanted to
wouldn't
wear,
smell as nice.
true. I mean, I used a nice soap, but
Yeah, but if it doesn't get enough like either heat or sun,
mhm,
it's not gonna smell nice.
yeah. So it took. I remember when like 2 or 3 days later, I went over to the same clothes I hung up and I touched it. I was like, oh, I can't wear. It should be dry by now. And then it was at that point I
Yeah.
realized maybe this isn't for me.
So it's so funny because actually my evolution of packing is reversed. Like I used to be like a very light packer because the trips I went on were usually more of like adventure party trips. I don't know, like so here we have a lot of beaches and I'd
Mhm.
go on beaches and we'd party a lot. Like we'd go out, go drinking. So like the less I took the better. Like I'd go on a 5-day beach trip and bring a backpack.
Yep.
It I wouldn't even have enough shirts for the trip because who cared. I wouldn't have even bought shampoo or something. But so like my trips evolved into that, to like more of work trips. And I've been on one too many trips where if it weren't for Joshua saving my ass because I didn't bring something or didn't think to be prepared about something, I would have like crashed and burned. Like the amount of times that Joshua just goes like, "We'll Amazon it, we'll pick it up for you," blah 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 blah
Oh,
blah.
that's another layer to the whole traveling thing. Every time there's a big trip, and I'm sure this will happen once you and I are able to finally get together again, whether it's here or we meet at a show. Um, yeah, it happens every time. Like I think, oh, a trip is coming up. What's the next new thing I can try to use on this
Mm.
trip? And this is how I have like 6 different ways of making coffee on the road, like
Yeah.
all the different ways of making
But like for
tea.
me, it was like a shift from trying to pack my lightest to trying to pack all I need. And I feel like now I've evolved into the type of traveler who'll just, screw it, bring everything.
Mhm.
Because I used to pack really light, and now I'm just like, okay, thinking about everything that I need to bring to make myself comfortable. I don't know, like 3 hot irons and my Dyson, because I remember I used to not. I used to like just be whatever. We'll deal with it. But in a work context, dealing with it along the way is a necessary stress.
Yeah, and it happens every time. Like I'll probably refresh some wardrobes. I'll refresh a couple of pieces of tech. I don't think I would have to for the foreseeable future, though. Because so many items came in during quarantine during 2020 that I'm sure I think I expressed this on one of the earlier shows that we did, where I was like, I just can't wait for the opportunity to finally use everything I've acquired and to do everything I learned.
Yeah.
Like I haven't used this camera at a show yet. Like that still blows my mind.
The same with my camera.
Yeah.
The same with my camera. And I can walk and talk and vlog, and that excites me.
Mm-hmm.
But we've not done it. I mean, hopefully soon.
Well, there was a one thing I wanted to bring up that I'm happy. At least I don't have to. I don't know if you had to do it at your previous employer, but I know I did, where I basically had to bring every device because other people needed to look at them. And that was always I can't believe I wasn't more scared for my belongings back then in places where like robberies and like theft can happen, because I was literally like rocking 12 phones in my bag.
Remember when I was starting out and I was scared because I didn't have anything to review? And like for people who are watching this, finding it from my side, because I get this question a lot, like how does one start reviewing stuff if like you can't afford stuff or stuff like that, And like for me, it's just being smart about it. It's not so much buying everything; it's finding people who buy it and then who let you borrow it.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding, because like I'll tell you now, even at the publication that I worked at, that was a thing. Like we'd find like the people who had it early and ask if we could, spend the day with it, please, just shoot it, once upon a time. So everyone starts somewhere, and you can't really buy all the new tech, right? So
nor should you.
Nor should you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even now, like I'm like, I really feel like it would be a cute video to do an iPhone 12 purple. But like, would I get the returns for that if I spend money?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, going. Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to not really pivot. I know we have one main topic for this episode, but I'm just sort of letting thoughts come out. So today, right before the show, I was telling Isa, my head kind of hurts. I feel kind of exhausted. Today was one of those days where I woke up and I had to get a workout in, knowing that I was going to meet up with 3 of my college friends, 2 of whom Isa has met. And I knew we were going to eat and possibly drink together. So I was like, okay, this morning I better get a workout in. So I went over to the gym, and because I was already pressed for time, I made sure to. This was one of the first workouts since I finally started going back to the gym where I didn't like extend my rest periods. Because in between your sets, you could do 90 seconds or 3 minutes. I made sure to do 90 seconds every single time. I feel like crap. Like, like my body is tired. I put it through the ringer today.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think about what I was saying, which I forgot.
Oh, sorry.
What was it? What was I saying?
I don't know. I started this before you even got out like the first sentence of what you were going to say. So I don't know what you were trying to say.
Shoot. What was it?
Well, okay. Well, the thing is, when we were meeting up with my friends, one of them who I haven't seen in a long time follows us, or at least follows me and knows about you, even though we haven't spoken in years. So he was like, so how's it going with like you and Isa and all, and you and your girlfriend's out in the Philippines, right? And I was like, yeah, I mean, kind of cool that you know that. I mean, it looks like you follow, at least on IG, you keep up with some of us. And he was like, yeah. And this was the first time. And I think if anybody out there is listening and you have this question in your brain of like, oh, how are they doing? Like, they're doing this show. I'm sure they're in contact all the time, Josh and Issa and whatnot. But I think it was finally recently that you and I finally said to one another, this fucking sucks. Like, we've gone a year and a
Was it
half.
just recently? I mean, we've known that for a while.
Oh, sure. But I think this is the first time I can look back in our Telegram chat and we actually both said it. Like, this sucks. Like, this really sucks. And that's what I told my friend who, when we were all talking, and he was like, yeah, I can't even imagine. Cause like, weren't you guys meeting up a bunch, like on a semi-regular basis before quarantine?
I was gonna say, I just remember that I had a highlight of the places we've gone to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
And
saw
like
your TikTok.
I totally forgot about it. And I was just like, oh, that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
I totally forgot about it.
Yeah. So we are being strong, if it's not already apparent through even this show. But yeah, it fucking sucks. It's already about it. We are almost a month away from my birthday, and now I will have spent like this amount of time without being able to, be with you or celebrate with you. So yeah, that's just a small update on that regard. But I did see your TikTok. That was a funny TikTok that you posted.
It was funny.
Someone asked you if we were engaged.
Yeah. Wait. I just it's annoying me so much. I forgot what I was gonna say, and now I'm so distracted because I'm trying to remember.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to make sure we don't have too much silence as you try to remember.
Yeah, but like, so we were talking about, what was I saying? Like, it was about the tech, bringing tech.
The amount of things that we would have to bring to shows, the packing, and the last thing that we talked about was how I had to bring like a dozen phones at any given time.
Oh, there. So yeah, when all I was saying was, remember, I'm trying to pinpoint the moment where when I asked you to bring phones to our vacation because I was so scared of not having phones to review, and you brought phones to Manila. And it was your mom, I think, and your dad and me who was concerned about not even that, but how you were bringing it in.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want some dude at the border and be like, are you smuggling or something?
True. And it would have
which
looked like
didn't happen. Yeah, which didn't happen, thank God.
Yeah.
But like, we were actually pretty concerned. It wasn't even like stuff getting stolen, but like people looking at it suspiciously.
Yeah, why is this guy coming in here? Like, as if I'm gonna come in and just start selling stuff.
Yeah.
Because I used to have, like, if you think of one of those first aid kits where there's a bunch of slots for different medical items, Band-Aids, cotton balls, all that stuff, Q-tips, whatever. Like, I found one where I kind of looked at it and I'm like, I think the phones would fit in that. And then each slot was a bunch of phones. And it's, man, I look back on it and I'm like, I was a gold mine walking. Had anybody known, they would have, I mean, I did get robbed in Barcelona, but back then, even before then, had anybody known, they would have known to get it out of me. It's like, wow.
So I guess, now that I've remembered, thank you. I that was a very specific thing that I just remember. I mean, what are memories but certain specific points in time that you mark in your brain timeline, right?
Sure.
Just like a very fond thing.
Well, now that you've gotten that out, what I was saying was, yeah, we've actually articulated to one another recently that, yeah, at this point, this long into this amount of time not being together, only being technically together. Hey, I already lost the game though, but it does suck. It is starting to get to the point where it's starting to suck a bit.
I mean, it has sucked. I guess like what we were trying to say was that it had sucked, but we hadn't acknowledged it and tried to be like on the optimistic side of things.
Just keep going. Just keep going. We know it. We are each other's light at the end of the tunnel, but just keep going.
I mean, to our credit, that's still how we think. It's just, it really just still sucks.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't change it. It pivoting, just like what our topic is, because like that's sort of how Our topic cannot be contained in one topic sentence. Okay, let me explain this. So last night,
Sorry, I
Joshua,
keep
being the
burping. Sorry.
responsible party in this podcast, messaged and said, think of a topic for tomorrow. And I was like, let me think of a topic, and then proceeded to get distracted by watching 2 episodes of How I Met Your Mother.
Oh wow, only
After
two. You had that
which,
much to say after
yeah,
only two.
yeah, I okay. So after which I realized and remembered that I had a message to return to, and I was like, I'm sorry, I got distracted because I was watching How I Met Your Mother, or correctly put, my sister was watching How I Met Your Mother, and as with all things I end up watching, I was there and ended up watching. And then I was like, I hate this show. Like, I don't like it at all. When I first watched it way back, I hated Ted. There was something needy about that dude that I couldn't pinpoint why I hated him.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm re-seeing these episodes, I'm like, I see why, because he's such a crap person. It's like, how do I explain this? I mean, aside from saying the obvious, which is like he's in love with the idea of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's just explained that already. That Ted doesn't look at the person; he looks at
Well,
the
let's.
idea of love, which is why like Robin was actually like it makes sense to be with her eventually because like she was the opposite of that. So in theory, the ending is actually telling us that you shouldn't be in love with the idea of love, but you should go for who's in front of you. But like I feel like that was executed very poorly.
Oh yeah,
That
we
arc
all
was
agree on that.
executed very poorly. And it's like it didn't get that message across, and then it ends up like as a shoddy way to end things. But it's also they all are very toxic characters.
Well, okay,
Like all
there's
of them
a.
enable each other in a bad way.
Okay, so there is this sort of trend in sitcoms leading up to around the point that How I Met Your Mother came out, and I think it does still happen a little bit still, but definitely in that era where most sitcoms leading up to that point, How I Met Your Mother and I would say Two and a Half Men are probably the two biggest examples from that particular point in time. That was just sort of the way you wrote a sitcom, like ultimately the characters are crappy people, and that's when the situational comedy comes in from. Even Seinfeld, like the one thing that Seinfeld did was they acknowledged in their final season in very hilarious ways that these people were realizing just how shitty they actually were.
Yeah, but Seinfeld, okay, I actually really like Seinfeld
Sure.
because they were written as real and clashing with each other on like one could be toxic one way and another could be toxic another way,
Yeah.
but it's not like they enable each other's toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they sort of like pull different directions with
Well,
their
I feel like
toxicity.
also they had their own. They had the characters in Seinfeld, and now, granted, I should say as a preface, I have not seen all of Seinfeld. I'm a fan of
I've
Seinfeld.
not seen all of them, but I've seen a lot of it.
I know that there are arcs in Seinfeld where each character, in their shittiness, has their own storyline where they are being shitty to the world. Or to the people around them. But you're right that in How I Met Your Mother, it's almost as if these people don't exactly understand just how enabling they are to one another. There was one episode where they kind of mentioned it. I think one of the love interests for Ted was like, "You guys are this is a codependent group of people."
Yeah.
So
No, but so okay, so the episode I watched was when Marshall and Lily were about to break up, and some people are like, "Oh, Marshall and Lily are like the perfect couple." They're not perfect. If when one wants to run after their dream, the other says no. That's like the shittiest thing you can do in a relationship.
mhm.
And the shittiest thing that Ted did in that relationship was that Lily was also her friend. And how can you tell your friend to not run after their dream because she belongs with a dude?
Mhm.
That's not right. The prudent thing to have to that Ted would have done had he been a good friend would have been to talk to Marshall and say, encourage her, I'll be there for you if you're having a tough time so that you guys can go through that together. And not go, Lily, no, that sucks. Don't drink from the milk, because that was the metaphor that they used.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
this is what I mean though, is that and this doesn't excuse it. All I'm saying is that of course, the writers of shows such as How I Met Your Mother and Two and a Half Men have to go in order to create the show that ultimately has the emotional response that those shows had. They had to go into the shitty parts. They had to make them shittier and shittier and shittier. Like the what you're saying is absolutely correct. That's exactly what real people should do and what emotionally healthy people do. But the way these people were written, now that we look back on it, the way that these people were written was never emotionally healthy.
I feel like they wrote it thinking that this should be a sitcom and I'll write sitcom characters. Like, okay, let me give you an example. Friends. They weren't the best people, but they weren't toxic in enabling the way that How I Met Your Mother characters were to each other.
Yeah, the whole show of How I Met Your Mother is around the premise of we enable each other. There are enabling moments in Friends, but the whole show of How I Met Your Mother is that.
Yeah, but like there were enabling moments in Friends, but there's always those mini what's the word? Like there were always those many moments of realizations.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm not saying that like there aren't problematic characters in Friends. Like I hate Ross. Joey was the best character, really, even in spite and despite of all of that and all those other things. But
some people, since you brought up Joey, some people are like, yeah, but Joey, all he ever really one of his main motivations was sex, and it was like,
yeah, sure, but
when you think about it, the way that
it was a long haul, though.
Well, like fair, but hold on. Sure, I get where some people will criticize the character of Joey like that, but that's if you think of it as like from a prudish sense. If you look at it in sort of like the current way that we look at like sex positivity, when you think about it, Joey was actually a pretty sex positive character. Like he didn't necessarily hurt the people that he hooked up with. Maybe once or twice in the early seasons, but in general, he was like, "Yeah, I like hooking up with girls. I like women. Like I do that." But he doesn't. They never really show him actively hurting and being a shithead to said women.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he's just sex.
He was always very honest. I mean, it was, of course, there were like instances where it was weird, like what is going on, and this shouldn't have happened. But like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, my point is, outside of that point, is that also like Joey as sex crazed or woman crazed as he was portrayed to be, he never pulled that on his friends or the people that he believed to be his friends.
Yes, that's true.
For example, he was always there for Rachel, and the most iconic moment was that time that Rachel got drunk and had a mustache and was actually hitting on Joey.
Mm-hmm.
Because so Joey found out that Rachel was drunk when he went, "How you doing?" to Rachel, and Rachel was just like,
yeah. "I'm doing good, babe. How are you doing?"
Yeah, and then Joey was like, stop giving her drinks.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess my point is, like, as scrappy as, like, because this is just something that clicked now, you know, that, like, it sucks because I feel like this was all How I Met Your Mother was written as if they knew that the characters were in a sitcom and they needed to do this. And, you know, so it didn't feel like as organic to me versus, like, Friends or Seinfeld, where there were like different frictions between characters because of how they are, and it just seemed real because they were pulling in different directions versus like, if I'm to elaborate more, versus How I Met Your Mother, where of course in this story they want Marshall and Lily to be together, so without rhyme or reason, all the friends are trying to get them together, and the only thing that's pulling apart is Lily and her dream. You know, like it didn't seem like there were any other motivation from any other friend to do any other thing because that's what the story wanted them to do.
Yeah, it was simplistic writing, and I remember back in the day when I was really into the show and I still really liked it. Of course, somewhat like Game of Thrones, once the final episode aired, it was like, okay, now I wish I had all of those hours of my life back. But anyway, the thing is, well, okay, I should clarify. When it comes to Game of Thrones, the last season might have been what it was, but I still think
it was still good.
It was still
very good. The process was still very good.
How I Met Your Mother absolutely has more of that. I wish I had, because the first 4 seasons I think were really good up until basically the point that you mentioned. and then a little bit after that, when they finally get together, and then they're like, okay, so it's this weird simplistic writing of Marshall being super selfish and Lily, and Lily just being written as a sort of villain in that sense.
Yeah.
That went away, and thank God. And then they finally went all in with Lily and Marshall being the actual, like, we are the married couple who are not even married yet. Like, that was good. Like, that was cool.
Mhm.
And the one thing is, even though I call Lily and Marshall a codependent relationship, and I've spoken as to how codependency, when it's bad, is really bad. They're codependent, but at least they're not super bad. They're just really there for one another. They do everything together, and that might be a little bit much for someone like me, but I get it. Back then, I remember watching the show, and there are moments where there's like heart. And those were the moments that the writers knew to write in to keep you in when more of the thoughts that you're having kind of seeped through. Because Ted, they would give Ted these beautiful moments.
I just really dislike Ted as a person, honestly.
Fair.
I think that's the main thing there.
Okay, fair. But here's what we were talking about in our chat, and here's where I think we both differ. And it's a good examination into what we both were like, I guess, around that time. I was literally known among my friends as Ted. I was the Ted in my group of friends. Why? Because I was the hopeless romantic. That I was the one who always wanted to like be with somebody and to experience all of the. I used to write poems, for God's sake. Like I was that person. And there's nothing wrong with poems. It's just I wrote love poems back then. And there was one time when someone described me, and one of the key points that she wrote was writes love songs. And that was like one of the things that they wrote to describe me to other people. Granted, they weren't songs, they were spoken word poems. But I think that the reason why the show was so potent to people like me, and to, as it turned out, millions of people who watched it, was because all the people who watched it were those hopeless romantics who in a lot of ways didn't realize that they are what did we call them? They are the nice guys. The ones who love and will do what they think is right for love. But they're also the same people who ultimately like get butthurt because their nice guyness doesn't get reciprocated, and that's a toxic thing.
I hate
That's a Ted line. Like, it's nice to feel needed. That's a Ted line.
I hate that.
Yeah, you've never been a hopeless romantic.
I mean,
I don't think you have. At least you don't seem like the type.
I think I was never that lovey-dovey, but what irks me about people like that is not the hopeless romantic part. It's the fact that when people like that do it, it's usually the other person in the story that tends to become collateral. Because all of a sudden, if the other person doesn't reciprocate, the other person is the villain in the story. All of a sudden, you were friend zoned, you know? It was never like, well, you weren't my type, or you were suffocating me with your lovey-dovey stuff when I knew that you weren't really there for me as a person and the flaws, but for the imaginary person. You thought me to be in the perfect relationship you imagine us to have.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just.
Uh-oh. Looks like Issa accidentally unplugged something. All right, so I'm going to hit a mark, just in case. And Issa will make her way back. I guess to elaborate, if we're going to use this, hey everybody, hi, I'm going to look right into the camera as I talk about this part. The hopeless romantic part, though, I feel like when you are a hopeless romantic, you already have inherently this whole idea that you have this whole idea of what you want your relationship to be like. Oh, there you go. Fujifilm. Oh. There you go. Did you accidentally unplug the dock? Hello?
Wait. Okay, so... Hello?
Yeah, did you unplug the dock?
So before I was very rudely interrupted by technology, let me point out that yes, I do have a new dock, and that's why I've been streaming perfectly, but I plugged it in, and for some reason it cut out everything else that was plugged into it. So note to self, always have the power plugged in. Because I had it plugged in without the power.
Oh.
No, but it's been unplugged. So my laptop, got the low battery warning. So I plugged in the power on the dock. It cut out other things that was plugged into it for a hot
Oh
second.
yeah, because that one connection is the one connection the laptop has to the dock for
No, no,
everything
no. I
else.
plugged in the power to the dock.
Oh, okay. Well, either way.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Well, while
Yeah.
you were
All.
gone, I did try to vamp a little bit. I even looked right into the camera, so I think some people might get kind of freaked out by that. But to elaborate on your thoughts about being a hopeless romantic, I feel like. Oh, and by the way, first of all, words of affirmation. You are doing very wonderfully with this new setup.
Thank you.
I'm very happy that you're as long as you are feeling better about it. That's what
Yes.
matters. Okay.
And I'm also realizing that it's really easy to plug in my actual camera here. So if I decide to be fancy, I mean this is gonna be my setup because I don't want to set up every single time. But if we were on a special episode occasion or something, I can do that too.
Cool.
Or if you want to do like a 2 cam setup, which I don't know why I keep on obsessing over that idea of a live 2 cam setup, but
Well,
you know what I mean.
that's what my live will be on Amazon. Not to plug it again, but I'm just saying. Okay, so yes, the whole hopeless romantic thing. The way I was kind of expanding on that thought. I don't know. I don't think there is a good version of a hopeless romantic, having been one, because when you are a hopeless romantic, you want romance, but that already colors how you will treat the person. Like you always only want you really want a certain version of this, let's say, relationship, even if it's not a sexual relationship or an intimate relationship. There's a certain relationship you want with somebody that you want to be with, and you already have these thoughts in your head. And if you're not a well-adjusted person, when it doesn't go that way, it's your reaction is not going to be very good because it's not what you wanted. When what you wanted is kind of, what's the term I'm looking for here? It's a little it's not really reachable. It's not really reachable because you've built it up in your head. And that is in a nutshell the entire Ted character. Is that he builds up the relationship he wants with each and every woman, and of course they crash and burn, because when it kind of feels like it's not going the way that he imagined it, then he starts becoming an asshole, or vice versa.
I agree. And in this instance, I feel like that's why it pisses me off the most because, again, in all of these scenarios, the ladies were the collateral to the story, right?
Yeah.
It was so. I mean, I believe that you can be a hopeless romantic, but be like a good person, but not the way you describe what a hopeless romantic is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I believe you can be a hopeless romantic and be in a healthy relationship and just, try to create those situations, Like, when I say situations, like, I don't know, candlelit dinner, if that's your thing and that's what your idea of romantic is, and just, okay, set up a dinner. But, like, notions of what a hopeless romantic is outside of that, outside of being a romantic.
Yeah. And
Toxic.
You know what? That's what I was I was generally seen in my friend groups, as you know, like, who I am now. This is who I was back then as well. It just so happened that when it came to relationships, I had this sort of like hopelessness about me, and I was still
okay, sorry, that was a funny way of saying that. I had this hopelessness about me.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, by and large, I was considered, and I think I was a very good person. It was just once I was sort of in, and I think I do have it a little bit still even now, where when I'm with the person who I deem or who I believe or who I view as my closest person, I'm more intense. Like I'm more intense, and I have more visceral reactions, and it's something that I have been trying to deprogram. But back to your point about different types of hopeless romantics, I think you're right. Maybe I shouldn't paint with broad strokes that all hopeless romantics are bad, but I will say this. There are two that I can think of in my brain that may not be ideal. One is the one I said. The one who's hopeless romantic wants a very specific type of what that relationship looks like in their brain, and when they don't get it, it gets kind of weird and odd and toxic. The other one is you could be the hopeless romantic that is super picky. and you never go out with people because you want to just wade very slowly into the waters, and
To
only if
find
the
the perfect
waters,
one.
yeah, and only if the waters
Yeah.
feel good along the way. What's funny is that version is not what we got in How I Met Your Mother. The other side was where Ted literally would say, I have to date everyone.
So I
And then he
feel
just
like
has
that
this trail of
second one,
destruction.
I feel like the second one, you are only allowed to be that if you're also the most perfect person in the world,
Mhm.
which most of the time the people who want it are not.
Yeah.
You know? And it's so frustrating to like see this narrative of like people trying to find the perfect one, and then you look at them and you're like, you feel like you deserve that.
Yeah.
You feel like a relationship will come to you without work. You're
Mhm.
not helping that cause though.
It was
You know?
the show was this weird lightning in a bottle, because I remember when I first saw an episode, it might have been like third season. My roommates in college were watching it, and they made them every Monday. They sat down, and I had one of those roommates that was like, "Everyone, shut the fuck up! Like, don't say anything during the show." And every time someone would make any type of noise, the shh, that kind of thing. Um, God bless him. You remember him, Blake? It was Blake. You met him at Micah's wedding. Yeah, he was that kind of person. But there was kind of it was lightning in a bottle, that show, because yes, it captured an entire generation of people who, because it wasn't necessarily in the age of like massive social media where we can like extrapolate these thoughts through TikToks and Instagrams and whatnot. A lot of people in my generation who watched the show and loved it probably didn't know much better.
No, I'm not. So let me just be clear though. I hate it now. I have watched it. I have enjoyed moments of it.
Sure.
There was something that never really sat well with me with that show, but it's not like I despised it. You know, it's
Oh
like,
yeah, that's fine. All I'm saying is the retrospective makes you realize why you did like it. So that I feel like that was what it was. It captured a whole generation of people who happen to have the same mentality as its main character. The hopeless romantic, just looking for that perfect someone. And yeah, you kind of have a trail of destruction along the way. But the other thing was,
which real life mimic. Hooray!
yeah. Which and then the other thing, and this is me making my confession about it. I remember when I walked by the television because I was going to the kitchen to get food, I was like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "Shh." But then when the commercial came up, they were like, "That's Robin Scherbatsky," and I was like, for some reason, we all really fucking loved her. Like everyone who loved it.
Yeah.
What was it about her? I don't even know. She was the epitome of beauty back then.
Yeah, because she was written to be hot enough but flawed enough. So she was hot enough and quirky enough but attainable enough. You know? She was the in between. She was the hot lady from afar, but then when you meet her, she's quirky enough and she can fall in love with you. That's what it was. Like, she wasn't so approachable like Lily. Lily was, you're cute, you're approachable, we can be friends. Maybe if I were in the perfect situation, I can get you. But Robin was like, oh my gosh, I see her on the TV, she's so hot. And then you meet her, and then she's just like normal, and maybe, and like, I can get you. So remember, you were talking about Ted being all of us or being that generation of men. And then Ted getting with that girl who was so hot, and you see on the TV, like she was an anchor.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she was quirky. And she was, she found weird stuff like stealing Horan's sweet.
Yeah, and she was into hockey, and she was like a homie.
She was actually, what's the term? What's the term now they use on TikTok? She was actually teetering the line of pick me girl.
Maybe
what they would call as a pick me girl, she actually was, but written in a way where she wasn't doing it on purpose. Like, it was just who she was. So it seemed like the very ideal. Yeah. So, and actually, so the arc I enjoyed more was that whole thing with Barney and Barney seeing her as someone who was more similar to him. Because she wore suits and like did cigars and does, all shooting and stuff like that. and then Barney realizing, oh my gosh, she's cool. So
Yeah.
I like that arc more. I think I like that more because it was more about like someone realizing who she was after all this time and and appreciating those qualities versus someone thinking, oh my god, she's hot initially, just like how Ted thought, and then knowing her. It
Yeah.
was like the opposite if you think about it. Like the unraveling was opposite. Like Ted found her, thought she was hot, and then it unraveled who she was. But then with Barney, it's like he's always known her. She was never that appealing to him, and then all of a sudden realizes these things about her which he never noticed, and then ends up liking her.
Yeah.
So
But you
if you
remember
look
how
at that, it was the opposite.
that started imploding though, where Robin was asking Barney, "Why do you even like me?" And he goes, "We're both messed up." And that's yet another thing where it's like that's not a very healthy thing to teach people to like pursue when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and like, but that was the thing. Like, I do
But I
think
think it's also just not very well written because what
exactly.
they wanted to say was that in this world where everything's imploding, to find someone else that allows for vulnerability and being able to work through that together is what I need. Had you phrased it that way, had they made it into that beautiful thing where, it sucks, but we can be together to work through the suck versus no, we're just both messed up.
Yeah, exactly. And like the I remember one time watching the show and liking it. I was talking to my cousin and she was like, I can't and she's like the biggest Friends fan of all time. And she was like, I don't really like that show. Like there's just something, I think she had a little bit of like your thoughts. It's like there's just something about it. Like the show's just all about sex. And I'm like, there were I'm not saying all of Friends is like this, but there were parts where Friends was like the pursuit of there was sex. Like we just wanted to have sex.
Yeah, but in Friends, that part was played by Joey, and like you said, it was never like it was something that was said, but never actively like
Yeah,
pursued, right?
it wasn't so, I guess, aggressive and raunchy in the way that it was written. And again, like How I Met Your Mother is simplistic writing. It's simplistic writing on characters that do represent things that happen in real life. Like people are shitty to one another in real life. Like there are hopeless romantics like Ted who just kind of fuck around and they just all of a sudden think, oh no, this is not the person for me, even though they made it seem like it and led some people on. So there is a lot of that. But what's funny is you brought up Barney. Where do we land on Barney? You never talked about Barney when we were doing when we had our discussion.
I mean, I don't like Barney, but I'd rather a Barney than Ted.
Okay, I think that was what it was with my cousin because she
at least he's real. Okay, as a woman, kasi you're taught to be wary of the people who pretend to be nice, but then like are super toxic because that's how they mess it. Like that's actually like emotional abuse because like that's But like if you, and I know this is bad, but you know why there's a trope about women liking bad men?
It's because they're not let on.
Well, one, yes, parang like you're. I mean, of course, you're not supposed to like any. You should like nice people. This is like deprogram your brain into thinking that you can change him. You can't. He's just a shitty person.
Oh, that part, yeah.
But but at least like the shitty person, he's a shitty person. The other person, Ted, pretends to be nice, but he's actually shittier. And so like there's that.
And I find it funny because my cousin was like putting that criticism mostly on Barney. And I kind of get where some people would think that way because Barney is literally written to be the comic relief of a person who's just out to just fuck everything. But now when you look back on it, the real toxic person was really Ted in the show. Like, when you look back on it, Barney just kind of pursued everything that he wanted. And he ultimately was a very loyal friend. And he ultimately was a very, I'll stick with loyal. I was about to say he was ultimately a very good person, but I'm not too sure about that. Like that might be too severe.
Ultimately, why are you guys friends though with everything that happened? I'm like, find better friends.
I will say though, I'm thinking back to certain moments that I like from the show, and the simplistic writing doesn't allow for like the deep discussions to actually happen because that's what simplistic writing is. But the simplistic writing did lead to some pretty comedic moments. There was one moment where I remember Robin was with the other anchor, who actually was a good character until he went off to pursue his dream, and then that he sacrificed his relationship with Robin to do that. But when she started dating the other anchor, Ted and Barney would fight over her when they both realized now that we can't have her anymore. We both realize we love her. So they both get really drunk and they both jump in the same cab and they go to her place. And then Ted runs out with the blue French horn and goes, Robin, I love you. Look, I have the horn. Oh, no. It's the other way around. Barney gets out of the cab first and starts like drunk yelling at her apartment, Robin, I love you. We should be together. And then Ted stumbles out of the cab and he goes, you son of a bitch. Like they both came in the same cab together. What? They know what they're going to do. And the way that was executed by those two actors was actually really good. I actually really like the actor, Josh Radnor, who played Ted. He's a really good actor. Unfortunately, he got typecasted after the show, but the show gave him these moments of comedic brilliance that unfortunately he's just not able to have anymore because no one wants to cast him after being this toxic character.
So you mentioned another show that was a nice movie, but was also very toxic. 500 Days of Summer.
Well, what was funny was
the
that
same character actually.
In a lot of ways, it was very similar, and a lot of people were loving 500 Days of Summer, thinking that it was this beautiful look into like what it's really like to date and what relationships look like in this particular era. And this was the era of the How I Met Your Mother, the 2010s ish. But I remember there was an interview, and even I see, this is how I know I was that demographic that fell into the trap of these shows and this movie. JGL, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, was being interviewed, I think at a college, and they were saying like we really loved the way that the movie sort of put together, even especially that expectations and reality part. Like we all want to have the expectations part, but of course the reality is different. But there's nothing wrong with wanting the expectations, and that's when JGL was like, "Hold on, you should watch the movie again and realize that." The climax of the movie is not when they got together. The climax of the movie is when my character finally worked on himself.
Yeah.
And the pursuit of what you believe is the best version of this relationship you don't even have yet is actually a very bad mentality to have. And when he said that, I looked back on it, I'm like, oh shit, I was that dude. I was the guy in the college, the guy who was asking the question. I was like, oh.
So I enjoyed that movie, but I hated how people were like, the girl was the villain. I'm like,
there was no villain.
So there was a villain. It was the dude, because he literally, this girl spelled out to him, I don't want anything serious. We're having fun. Every time he tried to take it a step further, the girl was like, wait, no. Did he listen? No, he did not. And then he still put on all these expectations on her. And then when she decided that, no, I'm not having this, he was heartbroken, and all of a sudden she was the villain.
Well, okay. What I meant was there wasn't like a villain in the traditional sense where there's like one clear bad guy, bad girl antagonist. Like it was written very nuanced. Which is a good thing. So, which is why I hated the movie's ending. Just because you work on yourself, sometimes you don't even meet people. The redemption should not have been meeting another person. The redemption should have been contentment in working on yourself. I hated that ending because it was such a great message if you dig deep, and then all of a sudden it was ruined by meeting another person. That again is like an unreal expectation. You don't meet someone just because you work on yourself. That doesn't work that way. Like maybe you do, maybe you don't. Well, it occurred in happenstance, to be fair. It wasn't as if he was working on himself to
Yeah,
meet somebody.
but again, the universe doesn't reward you because you're working on yourself. Yourself should be the reward.
Well, that's fine.
You
But and while that is true, also in working on yourself, it can just so happen that you do meet somebody.
Yeah, but again,
I think.
the whole issue in this movie was people expecting things to happen because of a certain thing or a certain way. Just because he was a good guy to Zoe Deschanel, he expected her to love him. And then at the end, just because he worked on himself, he expected the universe to allow him to meet another person he could fall in love
I
with.
didn't get that. I didn't get this point. I didn't get that point from it because they had that talk on the bench, which I know where that bench is, by the way, in LA. They had that talk on the bench, and then they moved on. And then
no, okay. I'm saying he as a character didn't expect it. I'm saying the people who watched it will be expecting it because it's what they gave as redemption in the story.
Well, then they're getting the wrong message, and that's what probably JGL was trying to say, because the character itself was never expressed to be like, I'm going to work on myself and then meet somebody. Like, no, that's not what he was doing.
Yeah, but so I know, but like again, the character itself was a crappy person. My point is, like, what does the story tell you in the end? The story tells you in the end that when it doesn't work out for you, you work on yourself and then you meet someone who will be your new hope. That's why it's autumn and then summer.
Mm-hmm.
A new hope, a new chapter. But a new chapter shouldn't be hinged on another person.
Mm-hmm.
It should be hinged on you.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like meeting Summer destroys the whole point. Had he not met Summer, the new Summer should have been within him. But then all of a sudden it gives you this curveball of working on yourself and then magically meeting another chapter in your life.
Yeah, I mean,
your chapter shouldn't be prefaced by meeting new people. It should be prefaced by your own learning.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess I did when I saw that, I didn't see it as like, oh, the cycle begins anew. I guess I was being positive in that sense.
Yeah, but that's being a hopeless romantic too. You just removed I mean, I'm not saying you, but like the story. It just removed expectations from autumn and switched it to summer.
You mean the other way around? Summer and then autumn was the new girl, right?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, autumn's the new girl. I guess when
summer and then autumn.
I guess it was just like one of those like it's not and I guess it's two different ways of looking at the final message because like he grew as a person and just happened to meet somebody in happenstance. That's I guess that's how I saw it. But I didn't really see it as like, oh, the toxic cycle is going to begin again. Though I understand where that can come from.
So I'm not saying that the toxic cycle begins again because maybe he's not toxic anymore.
That's what I was thinking.
But what I'm saying is working on yourself doesn't mean you deserve a new person.
Yeah. And
it still might happen. It might not happen.
That's where I'm coming from.
For you to symbolize, it might happen. Yeah, but for you to symbolize reaping the rewards of changing into another girl.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, this girl is an instrument to symbolize like how he has worked on himself and improved. You know what I mean?
Well,
which goes back to the whole point of him believing that Summer was a tool in his romantic fairy tale life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I hated that.
Yeah, I can see where you come from with that. And well, I mean, isn't that the Hollywood trope of like what is the ultimate symbol of achievement in popular media? That's getting the girl, getting the guy, getting the opposite sex, whatever the case may be, or the getting a lover. How about that? Like that's the ultimate symbol that they'll always fall back on. But yeah, I do think that 500 Days of Summer ultimately executed the overall philosophy that I guess How I Met Your Mother we retrospectively look at.
Yeah,
it did.
I'll tell you what, though, I think I loved How I Met Your Summer, regardless of
How I Met Your
I'm getting confused. I think I love 500 Days of Summer regardless because despite and in spite of that guy character, Summer was very firm in what she wanted and she drew lines correctly.
Yeah.
And it was not her fault. And she knew that.
Yeah. And again,
she was sensitive to how the dude felt,
mhm,
but still said, no, this is what I want, and this is what I made clear to you was the situation.
mhm,
And to be perfectly honest, like, I was sure with the other person.
mhm. Yeah, and I
And
was about to
and
say,
that's she was unapologetic in how she felt, and that's what I loved about that.
yeah, and on the flip side, again, as I admitted to earlier, I was part of that generation of guys that were in that
Mhm.
mindset of this is the person I want to be with. And if I'm not with them and I see that they've moved on and are with somebody else, it shatters me, and that's a lot of media back then was all about that notion. So
Yeah,
much of it.
I mean, admittedly, in the context of, in the grand scheme of things, this was all programming by the
Hmm.
shows we used to watch and what we used to. I mean, it's just okay. So I guess without even explaining the topic, huh? And we got into the whole conversation, but we wanted the conversation to be like looking back on older things and how like you saw it one way once upon a time and then now a different thing.
Hmm.
Um, but
These
I
things don't age
mean,
well. That was kind of what
yeah,
we realized.
yeah. But tying back to like the cultural shift, I think it's also because like in the last few years, we've seen a radical cultural shift into what is deemed as acceptable, what is deemed as empowering, and what we let slide and what we watch once upon a time. I mean, some people may argue that some people are being so sensitive, and in some cases they are. In some cases they aren't. I mean, it's not a We're not trying to paint in general strokes, right?
Hmm.
But reality of it is that this is the stuff we grew up with, and these are the ideas that we somehow got with the stuff we watched. And I feel like it's important. Like it's I feel that it's not so much trying to cancel stuff. I think it's what's important is trying to grow with it. Like
Yeah.
you and I, we are the product of watching all these things, but it's also moving through life and trying to realize and the recognition.
Recognition.
I was like, is that a word? Yeah, it's a recognition that
Emanate. Do you remember
I
that?
was like edamame.
No,
And
do you remember that? Okay, this is such a tangent, and I'm sorry, but I just brought it up randomly, so I'll just finish it. One time, Isa had to like get something checked. Like I think your ear was having some problem or
oh
something.
my god, yes,
Yeah,
I
it was your
remember.
ear, and we brought you to a place like we brought you to a
I was like
hospital.
the hospital. It was a
Yeah, we brought you to
hospital.
a hospital that my family is very familiar with. So we're like, yeah, we'll just take her there. It's fine.
Okay.
Like, we'll just make sure your ear's not infected or something like that. It was your ear, if I remember correctly. And yeah, you got the bill, and you just kept saying like, yeah. So I'm just gonna have to send this in. It's from Emanate, 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 Emanate. And I grabbed the paper and I just looked at it and I go, you mean emanate, like a light?
But why would you call a hospital that? I'm
there's
so
there's different names for hospitals all over the place, but yeah.
but why would you I'm sorry, that's
So
so funny. Yes. As a,
recognition is the correct way
yeah,
of pronouncing that.
yes.
But I agree
But
with
yeah,
you.
it's
The
a
whole
recognition that it's screwed up. It's growing with it and growing with the cultural sensitivities. You
Mhm.
know,
And I think
it's
that
I
there
think
is there should be, I don't know, we could do a whole episode on cancel culture and all of that stuff, and I
yeah.
I go back and forth, to be honest,
I
because
mean, there is value in recognizing that that old thing that happened, we don't do that, or this is why we need to improve on it.
but I think that's where it should be. That's what I'm saying is like,
Yes.
ideally in the media we get now, when a character is being toxic, like Ted was in How I Met Your Mother, you would actually see the growth of the person learning that that's not the best way to be, and that's not an ideal or healthy way
Yes.
to be. In 500
Yes.
Days of Summer, you kind of got that until autumn appeared. But and
Mhm.
then also another example of what was the one, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Jason Segel's character
I
also goes
actually
through that.
like that.
Yeah,
I
that
actually like that movie because he was a hopeless romantic, but I felt like there was certain growth.
Yes. There was certain
You
growth,
know?
and he didn't like actively still pursue Mila Kunis. Mila Kunis was the one who came to see
Mhm.
him in the first place. So it wasn't
Mhm.
this weird, like, odd carrot
I
in
mean,
the.
he was a toxic ex, right?
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day,
So was
like,
she. And I like that they showed that she was a
yeah,
toxic person as well.
yeah, yeah.
But anyway, ideally in the media we watch, we would see that growth and actually get that.
And that's the whole
Nowadays,
point, right? It's a
mhm.
story. The growth is the story.
And nowadays, like, if you see something that back in the day was problematic or anything like that, yeah, okay, there might be some instances where it's like, yeah, we should not like that anymore, or we should shun it or something like that. But ultimately, the best case scenario is let's explore why.
And let's learn from it. I
Exactly.
think is yeah. Like, and it's tough because I guess it's also these extreme positions we're taking without examining why the thought process is a certain way.
Hmm.
And I get it. I get it because there are certain things in the world that make me so mad, that make me want to lash out and say just no. But then you can't do that because an extreme reaction to anything is always not the right reaction.
Hmm.
Because if you wanted to communicate a message better, the communication should be don't read that, that's bad. It should be see now that you've examined it for yourself. Let's discuss why. Admittedly, in my head, that's the best case scenario. But the reality of it is that it's either some people will not understand the same way or will not have the and I'm trying to say this in the nicest way, but will not have the capacity
To
to
be
process it.
receptive. Yeah.
I'm not even saying receptive, I'm saying the capacity
Hmm.
to understand why it's an issue.
No, yeah, yeah. What I mean is to be
That's the
receptive
nicest
to
way.
be receptive to the criticisms and to the thoughts and to the reasons why.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. Even me, probably in 20, probably like last year of college, if someone told me that they really didn't like How I Met Your Mother, I probably would have
Mhm.
reacted emotionally and be like, "What are you talking about? It's such a good show." And like,
But okay, so this is also an example of why we shouldn't allow things in the media to define us.
yeah,
I think that's another thing. But it's
agreed.
easy to do that because we both grew up like saying, "Oh, I'm a Rachel, I'm a Robin,
I'm a Ted.
I'm a yeah." But like it's very important to realize and remember that these are characters and these are caricatures of what real people are.
Yeah, examine why you
And
think you are
so
that person.
yes, and so to attach your identity. And another point, this is why it's important not to attach your identity to certain things. Because then when people shit on those things, you are unnecessarily affected. When in reality, you can't possibly be that exact same person. That can't be the definition of your personality.
Well, yeah, 100%. I am even, I still have some struggle with that myself sometimes because I can be a fanatic. I can make something like a big part of my identity. And and like I said, How I Met Your Mother was a little bit like that back in the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're trying to go
I guess
through it,
it's also normalizing critiquing certain things even if you like them.
but also normalizing,
Admittedly, I
normalizing examination and nuance.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I despise the show How I Met Your Mother, but it's not like I see it and I shut the TV off and I'm like,
Yeah.
I hate it. I still watch it. I still derive like certain enjoyment from watching it, even though some characters annoy me.
Hmm.
But it's not like every time I see anyone watching it, I'm like, turn that off. It sucked. You know, like uh, it 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 was a different time. It was a different time for
And
sure.
and you know what? Some people shit on that phrasing. It's not diminishing the impact of something back then impacting things now. It is the truth, though. Like, it was a different time. There was a time when that kind of humor, those kinds of tropes were, like I said earlier, that's what a lot of sitcoms and shows were written as. That's
Yeah,
literally all it
and like
was.
I so again, it's not being extreme in all of this. It's not saying it was a different time and accepting it. And it's not saying we hate that, we don't do that anymore at all, or even like gaze upon it, right? It's recognizing that both can be true. Like Joshua always says, it was a different time. It is not a very good look right now.
Yeah.
We learn from that and then we move on and inform future decisions and future things we do versus harping on what it was and what it could be.
Yeah.
It's literally from a different time. Like, I mean, what we can't time travel and change that even if I wanted to.
Yeah, but I do think, final note, I do think Josh Radnor should get more work. I do think he is a good actor. I do like the guy in real life, so I think that pretty much does it. We talked at length about the How I Met Your Mother. And
Oh, I Bet Your Mother. How did that turn into a whole thing? Yeah.
Well, there you go. Like, this is the thing. Like, throughout the week leading up to the next episode, I think if we have an open, not an open mind, if we're aware, let's say, of what discussions we're having throughout the week, we can extrapolate that into a show. And this is what happened. That's what happened today. I think that should do it. You're the one with the controls.
You're gonna go do the extra.
Am I gonna do it? I guess I could.
Yeah. Okay. Bye guys. 3, 2, 1.
And that, okay, I unmuted. That will be the show. Follow Technically Together on any podcasting platform that you choose, any podcasting app. Personally, I use Pocket Casts, but you can also follow us on iTunes, where I would actually ask all of you to put some reviews in. Let us know what you think of the show. Those reviews actually help our viewability on those platforms. And of course, if you're on the YouTube channel, thank you for being here, and subscribe to the YouTube channel to follow the video version of the podcast. We'll see you on our next episode. Thank you so much for kicking it with us.